additions or corrections to the agenda? All right,
Yes,
I'll have a motion for approval of the agenda.
I want to ask some,
Okay.
well, I guess Marcia would be giving that report. I just
Yeah,
want to hear
okay.
about the board meeting last night.
Okay, yeah. me
The
too.
council meeting, rather.
I got several questions.
Okay.
All right, I need a motion to accept the agenda.
I move to accept the
Moved by
agenda.
Beth, is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Sheila seconds it, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right. Approval of the previous month's minutes, are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? You did an excellent job, by the way.
Yes.
It always helps to have them done well, because then it just refreshes. Any
Move to
corrections
approve.
or additions to the minutes?
Move to approve.
Okay, move to approve.
Second.
Art, a second, Beth, seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Public to be heard, is there any public here? Saying none,
Excuse me, David, there are two ladies that I don't know who they are.
we'll introduce them in just a moment here. All
Oh.
right.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to skip to new business. I'll leave the old business till a little later. I was hoping we could keep our discussion on the housing authority to about an hour. And so we have several other things to discuss also. So with that, I'll introduce the new members. Where's Lonnie?
No, it's
Is that
not,
Lonnie?
I know the two new members.
So Lonnie just
Other
stepped
two
down.
ladies. Thank you.
Lonnie just stepped out.
Okay, well, you two know each other?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Arlene Zartman. I've lived in Longmont now for just a little over 5 years. I actually originally grew up in Colorado, left, came back, and most recently we moved here from Salt Lake City, where I also worked for Salt Lake County for over 20 years in the aging and adult services program.
Awesome. Welcome.
Thank you.
She also worked with my daughter when my daughter was with the Salt Lake County Division of
Wow.
Aging.
She was my boss.
Well, just waiting just a second here. Well, I guess we can go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Dave Bruna, I'm the chair, and I've been on the committee for about 2 years. This will be my 24th meeting. And it's been a pleasure, I will say that. Lonnie, why don't you introduce yourself?
I will. What a way to meet everybody.
Oh.
I'm very sorry I started joking. So, my name is Lonnie Dooley. I've been involved in historic West Side neighborhood for the 20 plus years I've lived here. No matter what I did professionally, I always was involved in my neighborhood. And we started doing an email to put out information about what was going on in the city. And it's progressed over the last 15 years into a weekly email that I do. I'm very involved or very interested in what happens to the senior community here in Longmont. That's why I applied to be on the board. I would like to use my abilities as far as getting the word out to people, to get more people involved, or to get the word out to a wider community. That's a real interest of mine. And transportation for seniors. That is also a big interest of mine. So, I thank you very much. I'm looking forward to being on the board. If
Well-
anybody has any questions, please let me know.
Great, welcome.
Welcome and thank you.
Thank you.
We are delighted to have you
Yes.
as new members. What committees do you want to be on?
Always the first question anytime somebody joins a committee, a board. Huh?
We are, we're delighted to have you.
Okay.
Let's continue. Lisa, was it?
Yes,
Okay. Go
Lisa
ahead.
Gallagher, I'm the Regional Housing Manager for Longmont Housing Authority.
All right, again, I'm Dave Brunner, I'm the chair of the board.
Marsha Martin, the council liaison.
Molly O'Donnell, the housing director for the city.
Art Quintana, just gonna, at the end of this year, I'll complete 5 years on the board.
Ronnie Maida, Senior Services Manager.
I'm Robin Dosica, I'm your acting secretary.
Just acting?
No.
I'm Beth Bowles. I've been on board for 7 months.
I'm Janine Tarrant. I've been a board member for 5 years. I also volunteer at the senior center.
I'm also a peer support volunteer. I'm Sheila Conroy, and I've been on the board for, it's either 3 or 5 years. So, no, 3 or 4 years, and I've enjoyed it. I do a lot of volunteering, but not specifically at the senior center. I could do more.
All right, well, thank you. With that, I guess we can get started. Have I forgotten anything so far? All right. I didn't have, did I? Okay, never mind. All right, Lonnie and Arlene, again, welcome. And Molly and Lisa, if you could make your presentation however you want to do it. I don't know how much structure they were given as far as.
Just provided the information that you requested in the sense of providing any updates for around senior housing, any trends, any areas, any identified areas of support to come back to the board to see as we could support. So I communicated exactly how you framed it.
Okay,
So-
good. Let me ask first before we get started. How many of you have met these folks or had a presentation by them before?
Never.
Just, okay. All right. For sure. All right. Okay, well, go ahead, however you want to do it.
So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Again, I'm Molly. We could pick a couple of topics. I wanna kind of hear from you all what you're most interested in. And I'm gonna lay out a couple of options, of things we've been working on or efforts going forward. So first of all, is anyone interested in hearing about really what affordable housing actually is? That's something we've been trying to do, kind of an education campaign to the community to be able to tell exactly what that really means for people, because it was pretty clear from the Longmont community-wide survey that people are wanting work to be done in this area, but perhaps we need some education efforts out there to really say, what does that mean? Does anybody like to hear about that as a baseline or really dive into the senior side?
I'd like to hear a little bit.
Okay.
And can you kind of explain the difference between affordable housing, affordable senior housing, Section 8 housing?
Yes.
And that will help people understand.
Sure. So something we've been talking about recently is on that community survey, people said, city, how are you doing on your affordable housing programs? And we ranked bottom of the list. And I think that we really need to talk about what does affordable housing mean for people, because everyone, regardless of your income, age, stage of life, wants affordable housing for them, for their specific point in life. So what that really means, HUD is the federal agency in charge of HUD, Housing and Urban Development. They say that if 30% of your gross monthly income is spent on your housing, then that is affordable to you as a general guideline. If it's more than that, you're called housing cost burdened. For the city programs, because we live in such a high cost area, we say it's more realistic to call it about 33% of your gross income. If you spend that on your housing payment, then that is considered okay. Obviously, the less, the better. But anything more than that, you are housing cost burdened and you're gonna struggle to pay for other things that you need to pay for in life. And so whether you're in income restricted housing or just in the home that you've owned forever or rented forever that is just not part of that formal program, That is what affordable housing is to everyone. So that's what I'm calling little a affordable for every person. Capital A affordable means a real affordable housing program. These are programs for people in certain incomes that if you are below a threshold, you can qualify for assistance. And so on the city side, we have a rehab program for owner-occupied homes. So this helps, for example, if it's a senior, age in place in their home and make sure that home is energy efficient and doesn't have, a standard of living problem. So we go in and we use federal grant funds to help people make modifications to their home. We can do roof repairs and HVAC systems and various levels of things to help people age in place. And that helps keep our what could be naturally occurring affordable housing, not a program, but just keep that stock out there rather than deteriorate. On the city side, we also provide funding for development projects. So the city council sets aside $1 million a year of the general fund to go into the affordable housing fund. And after paying our operating costs, we put the rest out for competitive award to developers that do affordable housing. And so that's building new affordable housing that is in that income restricted range. So if it's a rental property, you can rent an apartment there and your income would be capped to be able to get in. There's a lot of nuance with that as people, if your incomes are still rising due to overtime in your job, there's some things we work around for that, but generally that is what that is for. When it comes to the housing authority, so the housing authority and the city are two different entities. They are housed under the same roof, which actually is only since 2020 and actually is working out really well to come up with a lot of efficiencies between the two and make sure they're really communicating and working towards similar goals and that type of thing. So the housing authority and housing authorities across the country are quasi-governmental agencies that provide affordable housing and manage housing choice voucher programs, or there's a myriad of voucher programs, but the two different major subsets are the housing authority operates 9 residential properties, a total of 462 units that are all income restricted. They all have wait lists, and sometimes they have lotteries to get on the wait list because there is very high demand. Different units are set at different income levels so that we have a range. And then I would say, for example, a senior that is living off of Social Security primarily is probably about a 30 or 40% of area median income, 30% of area median income. So that's some of the lowest level of units, income restricted units that we supply. And that really does hit those that are really living off of restricted incomes without other income coming in other than that. So we have, of our 462 units, well, I should say, of our 9 properties, all allow seniors in, but we do have 7 of those that are restricted specifically for seniors. 6. Oh yeah, Briar would always access the 6 out of 9 are restricted for seniors. Most of those are 62 and below, and we have one that's 55 and below. 62 and above, and 55 and above. And so that's how many units do we have total for seniors out of that? 380 or so apartments that are income restricted and age restricted. And that's actually a very large portion of our portfolio. We don't have very many units that are not age restricted. That's really because in the last 10 years, the Housing Authority really focused on senior housing because of the baby boomers aging into this and just really that demographic just booming, no pun intended. So that's on the Housing Authority property side. Sorry, that was me. On the voucher side, a housing choice voucher, which used to be called the Section 8 voucher program, That means if you are income qualified, you can, via a lottery and then a wait list, qualify for a voucher. What that means is you pay 30% of your income on your rent, no matter what your income is. That is what you pay, and then the voucher pays the balance of your rent. So let's say you're renting an apartment that's $1,000 a month, and you can only afford $400 of that because that's 30% of your income. The voucher will pay the remaining $600 to your landlord. So we have about 420 vouchers in our community, but also the Boulder County Housing Authority and Boulder Housing Partners, which is the City of Boulder's housing authority. They also they put out vouchers as well, and those people could live in Longmont too.
And Mental Health Partners is issuing vouchers as well.
Yes, so we've got a myriad of voucher providers. And that is something that seniors can access, but there's no age restriction there.
So Section 8 is no longer part of the lingo.
It's now called Housing Choice. Mhm. It's the same thing, but just
Housing choice.
Housing Choice voucher program.
Only just a quick interruption because you went through the numbers. That sounds like essentially for senior housing for the low end, between the supply of vouchers and the supply of units that we have, there's some overlap there because some people
Yep.
pay for their senior housing,
Yes,
LHA senior housing with a voucher.
yes.
That would account for about 1% of the population of Longmont. A larger number of households, and if you can do math in your head better than I can, 40% of us are seniors. So what percentage of seniors are provided for by this low income housing program?
So that is a very timely question because we're finalizing right now the housing needs assessment study that's gonna be presented to council next Tuesday. And just some of our preliminary demographic data, it looks like 16% of our population as of 2021 is 65 or older, so obviously more than that, below 65. But we're still running through this, so this is a sneak peek. But residents with a disability, 55% of seniors in Longmont have at least one disability. So those were some of the that I just noted, a couple of these statistics that are gonna be coming out. And then I did want to note, which I'm not finding it off the top of my head quickly here, but we're still compiling this all. But residents that are 85 years and older, that population group is increasing. So obviously as we've known for 10 plus years that the senior population would be growing, and now that group is aging into the 85 and up. So I will try and find that number while we're sitting here to be able to provide it later, but those were just a couple of the really interesting thoughts that I had. So if 16% of our population is over 65, that's about 16,000, since we're about at 100,000 total population. And then we have, let's say if we have 380 senior units. We don't have the number of senior voucher holders off the top of our head, but let's just round it to maybe 500. So 500 out of 16,000. I'm doing math. I do more math in this, working for the city, than I ever thought I would.
And given that units are full and waiting lists are long, and sometimes we have to wait until people pass or move into assisted living, if it's available. Would you say that there's a problem?
There has been a problem for a while. And now our new problem is we built all of these units for seniors in the last 10 to 15 years, but because of the way you finance projects is you have to have a mix of incomes to get the right mix of rents coming in to make them financially feasible. So we'll have some 30% units, which as I said is really where if you're living on just Social Security, that's where you stick. But we have 40, 50%, 60% area median income units. And seniors, if you don't have something else other than Social Security, those 50 and 60% units are out of your price range. And if you don't have a voucher, specifically they are. And so now we have 50 and 60% senior units that are really difficult to fill, but all the 30% ones have the huge wait list.
Right.
So everything is kind of morphing over time. And so we're trying to figure out ways to help adjust that. So for example, one of our development projects that we're doing is we're renovating the Village Place apartments right there on 6th and Kaufman, where Lonnie lives. And to do that, to make the new financing work and make sure that we attract investors, which primarily fund affordable housing, we have to show that the rents, they're not there to make a profit, but you have to show that the costs are covered through rents. And so if we are showing 50 and 60% units that can't be filled at the right rent level, we are bringing in a specific set of vouchers to try and add them into those units to be able to fill them with a 30% income person. So we're trying to do what we can to target filling those units, but still serve the need of the 30% AMI people. That's getting pretty technical, but we can always chat offline if you have more questions there.
How is the proportion of 50 and 60% and 30%, how's that determined and who determines that?
So in terms of how many go into a building?
Yes, I mean, yeah.
It's
who says it's got to be?
Giant math equation that it depends on how much, if you get more funding support, so from the city's Affordable Housing Fund, from private donations, then that helps you can make your affordability level go down on those units. If you can't bring in that funding, then you have to balance it out to show that you can cover the cost.
So it depends how much money you've got available.
I wanted to add in the income percentages. The 30%, that is an income of $27,900, and a 60% is $55,000 per year.
Hard for a senior to have that kind of income.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So if somebody's on a Social Security of 30%, you said, what if they need a place and they say, well, I'm at 40 or 50%, I mean, do we allow them to go in there and not be able to pay their light and gas or water, et cetera? Is that possible?
No.
We just don't let them in on that. Right?
Not at that unit level. They can be on a wait list
See?
for the unit that they can afford.
But you don't allow
So-
them for a higher one and then allow them to kind of hang.
The wait lists are too long.
So if there are empty units for seniors that can't be filled, what, is it federal government that sets the percentages, or is it the city, or is it the housing authority? Who sets it?
So it's a combination, but it's the federal government, so most of these affordable properties are funded through the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. That's an IRS program that basically makes it attractive to private investors to invest in building affordable housing in exchange for a tax credit. And so those investors are trying to meet the federal requirements and make sure that they get their tax credit, the whole reason they're there. I mean, they have some intrinsic value too, but generally they're not there if they're not gonna get what they got, they're investing. And so we have to show that we have the right unit mix, affordability mix, to make the project work and bring in the right amount of money for them to qualify for that credit, but also they're not trying to make a profit, they wanna show a loss actually.
So is there a group from all these different places that are trying to figure out a way to fill these empty units?
It's more all of us all together, constantly working to try and make sure we get that sweet spot.
Is there anything coming up in the pipeline for
So
that?
We don't have new senior units coming up because all the properties built in the last 10 to 15 years were all senior. And we are showing that we will always have a need for those 30% units, always. But we are showing that some seniors are possibly leaving the area because they can't afford it here. And so what we're trying to do is we have, I don't want to say neglected, because the need was for seniors. They were serving the need in the last 10 to 15 years. But now we're seeing we have to catch up on family units as well. So there are new family units coming out and what's called permanent supportive housing developments coming out, serving those that are exiting homelessness.
I got a question on need. I'm trying to get the big picture here. Starting at the tail end, so to speak, starting with homelessness. I have no idea right offhand how many homeless people we have in Longmont. Then the next step would be how many people are waiting for housing. Now, I know there are waiting lists, but what I'm trying to get at is what's the overall need? How many people do not have housing at all? They're living with their parents, their relatives on the street, whatnot. What's the unmet need that we have out there, particularly in regard to seniors? Maybe you can't answer that. Now, you said something about a survey.
So we don't have really great data. The unhoused population. What we do know is generally about 10% of the unhoused population is what you see on the street, what is really visible. 90% of it is people living in cars, couch surfing, living with family but wanting to move to their own place because they can't afford it. We know that generally nationwide that's the trend. What you see is actually a small portion, and what you see is often those that are very difficult to house. Sometimes they're not interested in being
They
housed.
also be a large share of them be mentally ill or have other issues.
That is a major factor. So 90% of those are really what's unseen, and those are the ones that are participating with the Boulder County, it's called coordinated entry. They're trying to exit homelessness. They're taking the steps to be able to find a place to live. We can pull that. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but we do have the number of participants through that coordinated entry program that we could share. And that's really our best way to get a number of those that are unhoused but looking to be housed. When it comes to our vouchers, which are, again, all ages, but when we opened our wait list at the beginning of 2022, we had 150 waitlist lottery spots.
Yeah, we opened up for 150 and we had over 1,700 on that one. And then when we opened in September of 2022 for 250 spots, and that was given priority to those who lived or worked in Longmont, we had over 1,200 applicants for 250 spots.
And that is 250 spots on the wait list for the vouchers, not to get a voucher. So then we pull off the wait list as we go down the line.
And then for our
Go ahead.
for our senior properties that are in our portfolio, each of those right now are sitting about 100 and 120 people on each wait list.
For each property. Each
For each
property
property.
has their own.
And look at approximately how long.
It could be anywhere from a week to a year, so.
More commonly, it would not be a week, but
Yeah.
it would more commonly be,
Couple months or
to a
longer,
year.
so it just depends on the property and what it's going through.
Because I don't know where I picked up that there's a 2-year waiting list on.
And it could depend on if they're waiting for a 30% unit and there's other people waiting ahead of them, it could be up to 2 years. Because some properties only have maybe 5 30% on the whole site, so.
Sheila?
I was just going to say, are there any people that are on more than one wait list?
There are a few, so,
Okay.
but not a lot.
Not enough to skew it.
Yeah.
We should also say that this present group has made a huge amount of progress in terms of eliminating redundancies in the waiting list, eliminating, I guess, zombie people on the waiting list who actually are housed and didn't take themselves off the list. And so this is a much more realistic picture of who's actually waiting than we've ever had before. The other thing is that there wasn't good messaging about how the waiting list worked in the past. So you'll find people that say, I was on the waiting list for 8 years. Well, no, you weren't. Because what really happened is they tried to contact you, couldn't find you, you were taken off the list, and then you kept waiting. So now I think you tell everybody they have to renew their application periodically. Is it a year?
And if they haven't changed, they need to update us ongoing. And we're calling, we're making sure we're following up with those on the wait list.
Making sure that if they've moved or have a new phone number, that we have
If they've signed a lease somewhere, if they want to be removed, or if they're not looking for now another year, like they still have that goal for a 30% unit, but they had to take a 50 or 60 somewhere else, but they still have that targeted goal, and they signed a lease, we'll move them further down in the wait list, more closer to a time frame that they may be available to move when we have availability.
Let's see if I can ask this right. When you have a housing development or apartment units, do any of them, their units, fit into this category as far as them being required to give a specific amount?
Yep, so the city has an inclusionary housing requirement, meaning if you develop market rate units, either for sale or for rent, then you're required to provide 12% of those as affordable to people under 50% of AMI. However, you could pay a fee in lieu instead, in which case then we manage that fund and then put it out as that gap funding for more traditionally housing tax credit projects. But yes, and so we do have a couple of developments that have done that. Vivo has a 26, is it 26 or that's VCP? I think they're the same. 26 deed restricted units for under 50% AMI. The farmhouse apartments did it as well, and we got a whole bunch more in the pipeline.
What's your name?
I'm curious about now that people are no longer protected by the COVID,
Evictions.
eviction. What have you noticed?
Lisa, do you want to take that one?
Well, we did have an increase, but
Yeah.
of evictions for non-payment of rent
Right.
or lease violations that were not corrected for long term that created nuisances, but it wasn't anything out of the ordinary, I would say, because there were so many programs to help those who do not pay rent. They had the ERAP and funding, so a lot of those were taken care of. It was those people who just were too lazy to go and get the assistance, and even with hand-holding, didn't want the assistance. But there's been a big change in legislation the last month and a half that is impacting landlords. We used to be able to serve a 10-day notice or a 10-day demand for like rent payments or the in compliance with their lease before it went to eviction. Now that's turned into a 30-day demand. So the tenants have a 20-day longer period to correct.
Which,
So,
for payment of rent, we can work with that.
yeah.
Right.
For substantial lease violations that are threatening the health and safety of neighbors, that's a challenge.
I'm thinking specifically of people that have lost their housing now that program is no longer available.
And there's still quite a lot of the Hour Center. We refer to the senior center, the Hour Center, churches and everything when we know somebody's having those. And we try to educate our residents. If you know you're having or going to have a situation, talk to us sooner than later. Because the sooner we know, the sooner we can get you in touch with people and help you get those resources to help.
And you do know that the resources are usually 1 month's rent.
And we do payment plans. There's different things we can do on our end too to help the tenants as well. So.
Really, eviction for non-payment of rent is generally quite extreme. You haven't paid for a year.
2 to 3 months or longer.
We
There's no
work
assistance,
with residents
That's
a
with
lot.
LHA.
Right, with LHA.
Right, with LHA.
The evictions in the general world, since the moratorium was lifted, I I don't think we have numbers other than how often Lisa's seen them at court,
But I will say with Longmont, we are very fortunate because we have city mediators that show up to court every eviction hearing, and they sit there with the tenant and they try to work with the tenant and the landlord to come up with a plan so the household is not evicted. And that's now a mandatory requirement as of this new legislation as well.
Right, and some of the problem too is the fact that rents go up.
Mhm.
And it's not so much that people have not paid their rent, it's that they cannot afford to live there anymore. And they can't afford anywhere else around here either.
Is there a differential impact with different groups? You know, for example, Hispanics, blacks, disabled, veterans, whatever? That some suffer homelessness or unavailability of housing more than other groups? Or maybe you don't have any data on that.
well, not specifically because they'd have to report that. And that's not something that's available like in census data because they don't necessarily always pull the unhoused. Let me check with the Boulder County data source on when they are pulling people from homelessness and see what they'll have that type of data. Let me pull on that.
Yeah, I'd like to have that.
Okay.
And then that other survey or information you were talking about as far as the kind of housing that's available, I'd like to have that report too. If you can.
Yeah, so the housing needs assessment will be available to the public. It should be here on tomorrow.
Oh,
We're finalizing it today for the council packet for Tuesday, so.
okay.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
We've been waiting for
I know.
so long. There's one more thing that should be said, which is that, again, the law has changed in the favor of the housing precarious population, but the state law has changed. All those apartment complexes you see are now required to take vouchers. It used to be that they were allowed to say, no, we don't accept that source of income, but now they must.
Yes, even private owners, if they own more than 4 rental properties, are required to take a voucher.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So in the case of developers, that's in addition to the 12% on affordable housing in new development.
This is at a
This is
different
just-
phase of
yeah.
operations. This
Okay.
is actually when they're in
It's
rental
everybody.
and it's all done.
Yes.
Regardless of whether it's a designated affordable unit or
Yeah.
not, you still have to accept a voucher as part of your rent.
Yeah. And it's called source of income, so nobody's allowed to discriminate now on source of income.
The voucher is the
Do you-
source of that.
We have a brand new housing development right across the street from us. I think there's 80 different, 88 units, paired homes, 88 units. So from what you told me, I assume that there's a city ordinance that requires a certain percentage of those to be available at certain income levels. But I really don't see them. Maybe they're there, but I don't think they're there.
Do you know where's it? What's
Prairie Village.
It's a Prairie
Oh, it's
Village.
Prairie Village.
So I assume
Right.
they bought them up.
Well, they either paid the fee in lieu or they were probably ahead of the ordinance. The ordinance was enacted in 2018, and if you got your building permits prior to that, you were grandfathered.
Well, 2018,
That
that was after 2018.
Yeah, that's right.
And building permits and actual construction sometimes lag as well. But we can
The
always look up in
property
our
was
database.
not sold until after 2018.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm still trying to get a handle on all of this. How does a senior center fit into this? How do they relate?
So.
She chuckles.
They're a major
Yes.
partner.
They are like one of our limbs almost. When we're working through situations with residents, it could be anything from mental health, rental assistance, just needs, resources, whatever. If we identify something that we can't meet in-house, we refer to the senior center. We have the resource specialist each have assigned a property that they each work at, or they handle the residents for that property. And so we're meeting tomorrow. We have a big meeting, a 2-hour meeting that we'll go through, both agencies will go through together and talk through situations, problem solving, how we can do better, what we need to do, just all of that. So we are working daily together and trying to identify those residents who need support services even. Like sometimes residents are fearful of coming to the senior center and asking for help or resources or even getting involved with other seniors. They don't know how to do it. So we are kind of that bridge that we work directly with like Veronica and Amy and like kind of connect them so that they see a face at the senior center. They have that familiar person when they go. They know who to talk to, who they can ask for stuff. And
Those are your 3 resource specialists that do most of that, is that right, Ronnie, to deal with those folks?
Today, I'm sorry?
Those are mainly the resource specialists,
Yes.
the 3, I think.
Yes.
Has it always been a month wait to see a resource specialist?
I feel like that's what I've heard, what I've
Has it always
inherited,
been
the
that?
information I've inherited, and I think that's just because of where we're at with our staff and who we
Yeah.
can serve.
I wondered if the length of time had increased, which shows the severe need for increased staff.
So that has decreased with the 2020 request for an additional resource specialist to address that during the pandemic. That helped alleviate that wait time and reduce the wait time.
then we have one resource specialist that is overseen by senior services, but LHA has, or
Works at LHA.
yes, works at LHA properties.
I must say that I tried to deal with the housing authority when my disabled son, when I was trying to get housing for him. It was a nightmare, and it sounds like things have really come a long way in the city of Longmont. So glad you're both on board. What's your staff? Is it just the
No, we've got, some of us are on the city and housing authority side together. Lisa's really the property management arm, and what is your total staff?
I think I'm at 19.
Between
wow.
property managers and maintenance. We have 3 on the voucher team. We have an accounting arm, and then the city's housing arm is about 5 staff members. So I did find a couple of seniors, specific data points that I just wanted to throw out here as I'm just flipping through. The poverty rate in Longmont is about 8%, but that has decreased steadily over time, not very quickly, but it has decreased. But seniors are right there at the 8%, meaning they're about equivalent with the city overall. But seniors have a lower poverty rate than children less than 18, those with less than a high school degree, Black and African American, Hispanic and Latino people, and single mothers by far. And then seniors over 65 are significantly more likely to own their homes. 70% of seniors in Longmont are homeowners compared to 57% of 35 to 44-year-olds and 34% of 18 to 35-year-olds. So those are generally people that have been here for a long time. It's not dealing with the housing market as it is more recently. When it comes to the racial disparities, because I've got the racial disparities on the people that are housed, not necessarily the unhoused, which I can pull for you, but the home ownership rate for non-Hispanic white people is 68%. If you compare that to Hispanic Latino, where'd it go? They're at 42%, so less than white people. And then Black or African American homeownership rates are only 19%. There's a significant disparity there, and that's in ownership. So that means the remainder are renters of those that have a census data covers that.
You don't have the distinction between owners with mortgages and owners who don't have a mortgage. That'd be great to know, because of course, a lot of seniors don't have mortgages anymore,
Right.
and they're sitting fairly pretty.
Mm-hmm.
But
that figure should be easy to come by through Boulder County tax
that's true.
assessor.
You know what? Before Tuesday, our just grab a pen. And analysts could probably just pull that, even if it doesn't make it in the report due to timeline. We could ask them to just report it. Good thing we're doing this.
What do what do you think the biggest impact, other than homelessness or lack of housing, has on the senior community? Where does it come out? You know, like mental health issues, addiction,
Well,
crime rates, whatever.
mental health, crime, and evictions for seniors seem to be in line with the rest of the population. We have, disabilities are higher, but specifically those items, I mean, we have people that you wouldn't expect, and then they were evicted for some other purpose, and then there was meth in their unit, meth pipes, and oh my goodness. So really there is no disparity on age when it comes to crime and evictions. The thing that I would say really does specifically affect seniors is the lack of affordable assisted living, and when people are living in independent senior living and really need to transition and there's nothing out there. So something we're trying to do right now, hopefully, I'm hoping by the end of the year, is we're trying to get an affordable assisted living development partnership going. We might be land banking to do that, just to spend our federal funding quickly. But we are trying to crack that nut, and it's a hard nut to crack. But that is part of our development plan.
I know you wouldn't have those percentages, but is there any kind of predictions as to how many homes are being used by multiple families? I mean, I know you wouldn't have that, but I'm just saying,
Right.
there's gotta be a lot of them, because there's, I mean, there's some of
We
these
do-
neighborhoods where there's
A lot of
Yeah.
half a dozen
intergenerational,
cars
yeah.
right in front of the house.
So,
That's more
we-
one family.
We can't tell from census data if it's multiple families, but we can tell the size of households. So let me see if I can grab that.
If they're honest.
Well, right, it's all census data, so it's what's reported, household size. So in 2013, the number of households, well, let me just qualify this. We can tell that that's a growing condition here. The numbers are hard to pull because when you're looking at census data, they're offset by the younger generations coming in can't afford an actual home, and so they're living in smaller apartments, and so the data is offset. It's weighted over here, so you can't really tell what's happening. So for example, in 2013, the number of households with 4 or more people was at 25%. In 2021, it was 21%. So it looks like it's going down, but that's offset by the number of single person households coming in, because it's tied to having more studio and 1-bedroom apartments for people that are younger and don't have, maybe, marriage rates are going down, the number of children are going down, so the smaller households are increasing on one side, but so are the large ones, so it's just kind of offsetting each other.
Does LHA have any restrictions in terms of number of family members or who can live in their facilities? Because, culturally, in the Hispanic community, families live together, often mothers. So are there any restrictions? Are there number restrictions?
There is, it's different per almost property. So our 62 and older properties, everybody in the household does have to be 62 or older. Unless they have a living caregiver, and that cannot be a spouse or a direct family member. 55 and over, those properties can have household members under 55, they just have to be at least 18. And then we do have family properties that we have seen a lot of intergenerational households living together in, and that's kind of our focus with Hover, which is one of our new developments. We'll have anywhere from 1 bedrooms to 4 bedrooms.
Trying to get larger.
And are there any number of people in the unit restrictions?
There is. The city has restrictions, and like each property, it's federally, I believe it's 2.5 persons per bedroom or per room, including a living room.
And that's driven also by the voucher program, because you have to make sure that you report your whole household to make sure the income is calculated correctly.
Janine, to that, and this is anecdotal because when I canvass as a candidate, I ask people questions when they're willing to talk to me, like, is your household multi-generational? How many voters do you have?
I just need to look in the closet in here for something.
And some of my neighborhoods in my ward, like Southmore Park, have a larger Hispanic population, and the multi-generational households there are in fact higher. And again, this is not census quality data. This is people who answer their door and are willing to talk about it. But it's significant enough that when I talk to builders, I try to advocate for building both rental units and for sale properties that accommodate that. Because, you know, a lot of, this one family that I'm fairly friendly with in Southmore Park, has 3 generations living in the household, and the house has 1 bathroom. You know, that's no way to live, and, you know, and there's, yeah. But yeah, we should be.
Public no bathroom.
Yeah, we should be designing our dwellings to accommodate the way people want to live instead of forcing them to live in the places we build.
Is there anything that you think should be added to the relationship between the senior center and the services that are provided and what you do, or vice versa? You know, are there any areas that need to be beefed up or taken away or whatever?
I feel like we are utilizing it to the max.
I'm sure you are.
We're talking about, we have our resource specialist position that we partner with senior services to provide at LHA. It serves.
That's a half position.
No.
Well, it's one whole position, but it serves 100 units of senior housing and then 80 units of permanent supportive housing, of which there are seniors, but it's not age restricted. And so that we think that all of the properties, especially the other senior properties that don't have access to that person specifically, would benefit from that. So we put in a budget request together to get another position to have a dedicated person for the remaining 280 senior units that we have.
Is that this year's budget?
For 2024.
So, a couple of things that I think would maybe be a little bit interesting for them to hear. And you mentioned meth, and the fact that the meth has, at least the awareness of it, has gone up, and units are down because you guys have got to go in there and clean them up. And they can be down for a significant amount of time, which means there's no rent and nobody can get in there. So can you talk about that a little bit and the cost? And then the second thing is, I know that you have property managers on site, and I think that would be nice for them to know that as well.
Sure. So for the property managers, all of my property managers do live on site at the senior communities. It helps with kind of a reassurance that somebody's there, they're walking around, that they're there they don't work weekends, but if there is something, we call it fire, flood, or blood, my managers will respond and take active control. It's kind of just help because they're walking around the property, they're coming in and out, residents are seeing them. It kind of just creates a calmer peace with the residents that somebody's there. And that's just, I think my last manager moved in November, so everybody's on site. So Hartston Lodge has a manager there living on site. Fall River Spring Creek has a manager living on site. Village Place has a manager living on site. And the Aspen Senior has somebody living right next door in our townhouses. So, and then for meth, it's on the rise. I have had a meth unit at Spring Creek, Fall River, Aspen Senior in 2022, early 2023. I have one currently at Village Place, and I have them at the Suites, and it does not discriminate against age. I've had anywhere from a 55-year-old household up to an 84-year-old household have meth. to test a unit for meth, the first test and the final test is about $3,000 total. Cleaning can range anywhere if they just smoked it once in the unit, like they smoked in the bathroom one time, I'm looking about $10,000 to $16,000 to clean and remediate that unit. If they smoked multiple times throughout the unit, that's closer to $90,000 to $117,000, I think is the highest I've had too.
And we don't have that funding. I mean, we don't have it. We have an insurance policy that is like gold, and we are tapping it out. So we are looking to do, we're trying to see if we can do like we always would clean it till it's certified clean, and then we're looking to bring in like a community build effort like Habitat, because we don't have, I mean, affordable housing doesn't make money. We don't necessarily have, it'll take a long time to build up enough reserves to be able to just cover this ourselves, so.
And it means that it isn't necessarily that the owner of the unit is cooking meth in their unit. They could have a family member come over and do their thing, and you're stuck with that
What's the
behavior.
longest that you've had a unit down?
Right now I have one that's been down, I think, 438 days, my last report.
Wow.
And that's a unit that somebody could be living in.
Right.
It's
So,
crazy.
And a significant financial loss.
Yes.
They
Right.
have carbon monoxide detectors, do they have meth
It's
detectors?
just
Yeah,
gonna ask
funny
that.
that you say that.
I was just gonna ask that.
So
Great
not
news.
commercially available in the US. There is one company that is creating them in New Zealand, and they've been using them in New Zealand for a couple of years. We have one from them, and we're testing it as a prototype right now, and we're just making sure it actually works, because they're not cheap, but they're cheaper than rebuilding.
Right.
So we are testing it right now. We're getting about 3 or 4 more in. They're in the mail. And making sure they will work and are worth the investment. And then if they are, we intend to invest in them, because that's really what it is. And it's really not, the point is not to catch somebody in the act. We'd be putting them into clean units, certified clean, and say, you're moving into a clean unit, you have a meth detector. It's more of a preventative measure to, if someone cares enough about their housing, which some don't, if you care enough about it, it would hopefully deter people and reduce our cost and make sure these units are available to the community. So that's our plan, but it's in progress.
Sheila.
So I don't know how do you find out that this unit is,
We mostly don't.
so there could be some that,
There's one, we only had one where we were able to evict because of meth. Usually we find it after they're gone.
Or as we're doing the eviction, because like she said, we've evicted them for something else.
Yeah.
And as we're doing the eviction, we are finding.
so you test for it when
Yes.
somebody moves
Yeah.
out.
Oh, well. If
Not
we
every
find-
time, we
yeah,
have to
but-
have cause,
Yeah.
but there's almost no way we can't prosecute for it, or, refer it for prosecution. It's just, the best we can do is if we evict someone because of meth specifically, again, we've only had one, we can make sure that goes on their eviction record, so that a future landlord can deny based on that, which is a cyclical problem. Then they're unhoused, and that's an issue as well. But us not being transparent about what happened would be putting a private landlord that has way less resources than even us in really high risk, so.
And do we, is there any way of just, I mean, that's a lot of units, but going into the homes from time to time, is there anything about visiting a unit every so often, anything like that?
Yeah, well, we do,
Inspections.
2 inspections a year. We're starting this year. Typically it was 1 a year, but with COVID, we couldn't just go into people's apartments. So last year we did 1. This year we've already done 1. We're gonna do a second one, but.
But you didn't let them know in advance?
Yeah,
that
we
you're
give them a
gonna go
24,
in?
at least a 24 hour, but these people are not leaving their meth pipe laying around.
Right.
And, it's very hard to smell meth. It's a chemical smell, so if they've cleaned and they have candles going, you're not gonna smell it. Just, like it's,
Boy.
So, and we can't test without cause.
Yeah.
We can't go into someone's unit
So you
just
can't, like, when you
testing
go in
things.
for the inspection, you just can't do a quick test.
But also because even if it came up positive, we couldn't say that you specifically did that.
Right.
It could have been there from your prior tenant. We
And-
can't, unless the unit is clean, and then we find it and can prove that what,
In that time
that it was you,
period.
yeah,
Right.
But if an empty unit is tested when somebody moves out, that would be a way to
yes,
catch it.
yes.
I was a realtor and we tested, a lot of people tested for meth and it wasn't invading their rights.
Right. So it's a very complicated issue, but our goal is
Yeah.
use prevention and then use this method of the clean and put in the detectors, which it'll be rolling. I mean, it's not gonna be all at once, but as we progressively get each unit covered. that's the
There's an
idea.
easy way to tell if meth has been in a building. Can't remember what it is. You spray something on the walls and it turns blue.
Have you heard of that? I haven't heard of that.
That's the real estate association.
I'm sure that's not blood.
Well, so, do you, when someone leaves, either because of death or because they found other housing or because they were evicted, usually for behavioral purposes, or reasons, right? Do you test every unit to make sure it's clean at that point, or only the ones where it looks like there's a
If we
reason
have
to test?
suspicion, like, we'll talk with our crime-free specialists, because we work very closely with PD and we're part of the crime-free housing program. And we kind of work through it and be like, okay, do we have suspicion? This is what we've seen on our end. You know, even if somebody just leaves, you know, just packs up and leaves, we'll be like, okay, do we have suspicion? Is there anything, was that a high-traffic unit? We're going through this to just be preventative, but even to just go in and test is costly. So.
It's still a very small percentage. The small percentage is just very disruptive.
Yeah.
Overall, out of 482 units, we have like 6. So it's not, I mean, we'll never know until we have data on every single unit. But generally, it is still a small percentage. And so the chances are of regular vacancy is probably not meth contaminated. And we do have, I mean, we work very closely with public safety to make sure we're following the rules on reasonable suspicion and unlawful search and seizure, which this could, you know, that's the things we don't want to overstep on.
And to put it in the right perspective, you get exposed to meth many places that you go.
Yes.
And, you know, whether it be the library, bathroom, or the transit center, or, you know, it is there.
So Boulder County Public Health has come out and done some educational events, and the limits that are set by the state that say you must clean and remediate are so conservative. Therefore, like if an infant licks a wall, they are very conservative. And so the general population is more exposed than we could probably ever document. But generally to an adult person, they say that it's not a giant health risk, but we're not gonna also, you know, there's that fine line of not taking chances and making sure we've got just following best practice.
He's trying to answer.
Oh, no,
It's
sorry.
okay. You know, it sounds like although it doesn't happen very often, it eats up a huge amount of your budget.
Yeah.
And I bet you a budget that, you know, in the past 10 years, you never expected to have.
Oh,
You know, you never put it as a line item.
Mhm.
So, do you see down the road that you would be able to put a detector in apartments that would alert immediately,
Yes,
let people know?
if
so
they
that-
work, if we can show that they work, that is our intent.
Good.
Also, we are starting to set aside a meth reserve fund. We just started it in 2023 though, so it's gonna take time to build. But we are trying to plan for it with every extra dollar we have.
And you said they were expensive, the ones that are being tested now. How
So
expensive are they?
we're negotiating a bulk
Yeah.
deal, but if you were just to buy one, if you're a small landlord and want to put it in your
Yeah.
single rental unit, it would be about $600 for the device, and then you have to pay basically like a cell phone line, cause it's connected to a network. And so maybe like $26 a month for that. So when you're doing it on a small scale like that, that's probably that's the bang for the buck, because you don't have any safety net if you get meth. For us, doing it for 482 units, that's a pretty good chunk of change, but.
So even if they were $100 each, that would be.
Yeah.
a lot more.
And for us, you know, that could be 480 times, 400, I should say $500. But that's still less than like 2 down units.
That's true.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
So
And you could put them in as people move into for the first time.
that's the idea.
You know, I mean, you wouldn't have to worry so much about the people that have been living there forever. But, you know, for the people as they move in the first time, then you start
Right.
putting the detectors in to avoid people moving in and using them.
And, just to compare, if you get a modern communicating carbon dioxide, car smoke and carbon monoxide detector, that's what, $26 to $50.
Yeah.
So, of course, you don't have to pay anything monthly because it uses your own Wi-Fi. But
Question on your funding. Most of your funding is HUD funding, is that right?
Local funding through the general fund for the city side,
General fund?
and then federal funding through the city side and primarily on the LHA side.
So, okay, I think you said $1 million on the city side?
$1 million a year transferred from the general fund. That's the ongoing source that city council is committed to since the 90s. And then we also, now that we have the inclusionary housing program, that fee in lieu revenue, when market rate developers choose to pay fee in lieu instead of provide the 12% units, that also comes in. And so now our projections for that are going up as those developments are finally kicking in since 2018.
So it's been $1 million for a long time.
Oh, it's been the same amount for all that time?
Maybe in the 90s there was a ramp up, but it's certainly been $1 million.
For the last
And plus there's
while.
actually there's a little nuance. It's 1.2 because 200,000 of it helps serve like the salaries and pay for our operational costs. But there's actually, so the $1 million plus some administrative funding from the general fund. There's the fee in lieu revenues from market rate developers, and we actually are getting, since in the last 3 years, half of our marijuana tax revenues as well, which is about $300,000 a year, the half of it.
yeah.
Marcia?
Molly, I think we need to understand that is not at all the resources that the housing authority has for building by far.
Oh, yeah.
So when Molly plans a new development, as is going on North Hover right now, there's a stack, and that's actually what it's called, is a capital stack. And it includes money from HUD, money from the state of Colorado,
Chafa, yeah.
Chafa.
So that's the housing tax credits. So that's the
That's right.
private equity that funds like 80 to 90% of affordable housing.
Yeah, low-income housing tax credits, or LIHTCs, is that, and then other sources as well, grants. I think Harold is, as the interim executive director of the Housing Authority, has been extremely creative in terms of finding things that can be used for grant matching, which is always a problem, right? Because you can't get a grant unless you can match, but if you are a marginal business, which the Housing Authority is, you can never build up any money for matching funds. But so if the Platte River Power Authority or our local distribution utility, Longmont Power, invests by saying, we're gonna put in special infrastructure to meet some state or federal goals for this new development, that can count as matching. And so, I think that the new housing authority in particular has been extremely creative in terms of expanding its ability to build. Would you agree? I hope you agree.
Yes, and partly because we keep our staff, we got a project manager, and then I help with the developments as well. Rather than self-developing and self-funding all of this, we're bringing in private developers to do the bulk of it. That's what they do every day. We'll just manage and make sure that LHA's interests are considered, and our gap funding is put in. So in that way, we've got like 4 development partners working all at once, and we've got developments coming out in 2023, 24, 25, 26 and 7 we're filling, and then 28 is already filled. We're just rolling from here on.
Do you have anything to do with the veteran small
The
home?
Veterans Community Project?
Okay.
Yep, so the city council invested in that project by offering a 100% fee waiver for those homes. They also got some, they are fulfilling the affordable housing need for the adjacent market rate development. So they were partnering all over to help fill that 12%. They have a lot of private donation funding that's going in as well. And then the Housing Authority used to operate up on 1228 Main, but we brought the Housing Authority offices into the Civic Center, and VCP is now leasing that, and we're considering selling that building to them as well for their administrative office. So we're partnering with them in several different ways.
And they are also really good, by the way, at finding rental situations elsewhere for veterans. It's not just the tiny homes that represent veterans coming out, exiting homelessness. So they're very effective.
Lonnie?
I'm often asked, for various reasons, people who are looking for help with their rent. They're stuck for a month, they're stuck for 2 months, where can they go? I tell them the Hour Center, I tell them the Senior Center, but is there any other?
Those are the main 2 ones outside of COVID relief. COVID relief through Boulder County's Emergency Rental Assistance Program is now complete.
It's not working anymore?
It's not, they've used up all the funding. So those are the 2 primary resources I'd say are available right now.
And a lot of churches are now stepping in now that the COVID funding's gone to help pay rent.
Do you know which ones? Yeah, you could share that with me.
I know the Mormon Church, even if they're not a member of the Mormon Church, has been paying rents. We're seeing just checks left and right from different congregations.
Okay.
There's a private charity called A Woman's Work.
Right.
Yep. And they're I don't think they have a vast donor stream, but they operate kind of like the Hour Center. They'll give you money when you have an extraordinary need, whether it's a month rent or whether it's a used car, stuff like that.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments for Wally and Lisa?
I think this is very fruitful and informative, and so I appreciate your time.
Pretty busy. I was gonna ask what you do in spare time, and I showed you.
Parent toddlers, which doesn't help on the energy side of things, but.
I was gonna ask you, will you come back again sometime?
Sure.
Yeah.
I just want to say that I deal with LHA a lot because I live in one of their properties. And I can say that their plans for the future are really shoring up to be comprehensive and ongoing and helpful for the needs, in my case, of seniors. I can see they have good vision for the future as far as what they plan on doing and how they plan on doing it. And I know that they've been great about funding, finding, like you said, Harold can be very creative, finding the various ways to get funding. And they've told us about deadlines that have been met. Okay, we're now all set with the tax credit, and we're now all set with this and that. My building is being renovated, and will start in the beginning of 2024. And they've been very good about providing us information about what step they're at and where, you know, what's gonna happen in the future and things like that. It's just trying to relay that information to 72 seniors that has been a bit of a problem, but we're working on it. Hasn't been a problem, it's just that some people don't always hear what's said, you know, or get exactly what's going on.
People are in a change resistant
Exactly.
state of mind.
Exactly, they don't, you know, they're fearful of change, they're fearful of what their apartment's gonna look like when it's been changed, which, Lisa told me the other day that they're gonna actually do an apartment, the meth apartment apparently, is gonna be redone by the developer before they even start, so that people can wander in and say, okay, those are what the cabinets look like, and that's what the counters look like. And I think that's gonna go a huge way with settling people's fear of change and worried about, you know, how it's gonna look. So they've really been innovative, they've been trying very hard to communicate things to us, and I just wanna give them a hand for that, because they've had a lot going on, and they've shared with us other properties that are in the pipeline as far as non-senior. And it's like, wow, they're really doing some heavy work in the next couple of years or in the ongoing future. So I just want to tell them that they've been doing a good job, and hopefully we'll continue to communicate with everybody and get a good job done.
And one more positive thing, I live in Prairie Village also, and I tell you, I was very concerned when the senior units went up, and the property managers, they're doing a great job, I think they look clean, neat, very positive, because I've been in other communities where there's been a few too many people moving in with their parents or grandparents, stuff like that, but I don't know if it's here, I don't see it.
No.
Good job.
Well, thank you.
I'd just like to say one thing about the senior center's contribution to this, because the council is LHA board, so when there is a problem tenant, which there have been, you know, somebody who, for example, really needs assisted living and isn't in it and can't afford it, they tend to disrupt the whole floor, you know. And the counseling and other resource assistance that comes out of the senior center, I think is a really invaluable resource in terms of keeping all of that stuff under control while the property managers find a way to deal with it.
Senior centers are one of our limbs. We depend on them.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Very good.
Pleasure. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
I have a feeling you'll be back at some point.
I bet so. So I'm gonna take off because I gotta go get this
Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Lisa.
done.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks, Molly.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks for the kind words too.
Yes, thank you.
Well, at least when you come in the future, you'll have already explained affordable housing.
Yeah.
pretty clearly, so
Get into the
we'll have that heads up.
the nitty gritty.
Right.
All right, thank you.
All right.
See ya.
I'm going to stick with the new business actually, and let's have an update on the senior center staffing. Could be a fair amount to talk about here.
Yeah.
Lonnie, do you want to lead off?
Yeah, sure, and I just want to see the direction I want to go, so I'll start off talking about our staffing updates on our new hires and kind of some questions that have been circling around the community for some time. So, new staff, we have brought on Catherine Onaka as our part-time office assistant. So she just cleared everything, and she'll be joining us in the next few weeks, as well as evening custodian Tommy Gibson. So who will be joining us at the end of the month as well. So that leaves us with 2 vacant positions currently, which is our resource program supervisor and our resource program, our recreation program supervisor and our recreation program coordinator position. So Amanda had put in her 2 weeks notice to resign her position, and her last day was June 23rd, and Shar Sloan, her last day will be July 31st, so she's hanging out with us for a little bit. So kind of want to talk, and I just want to let this be an open conversation as well, allow anybody to have any questions we have, because I know this group has done a lot of work, collecting our data, collecting information to go to, at first was City Council, but then we had the opportunity to meet with Harold, and share our story, you know, where we are at as a facility, what rate we're programming, how many participants are registering in our programs, what our facility attendance numbers look like, as well as examining the community, right? What is our current population as a Longmont community, but also our 55 and older population as well, and what those projected numbers look like in the next 5-10 years. So this group did a lot of work for that presentation to go to Harold. But again, it sounds like there's still a lot of circulating questions, so I just want to keep this open and answer any questions and see where we are as an advisory board, but also identifying fact versus fiction. What are some of those circulating rumors right now? Because there's a lot of circulating rumors, and I feel like this group has a little bit more insight than some others. So, with that, where do we want to go?
Well, I don't know where everybody else wants to go, but I listened to the city council meeting last night, the first part of it, where they had the public speakers. Anybody else listen to it last night? And there was one person, Ruth Rockholm, I think was her name. Anyway, I think her main point was that part of the turnover, the reason for the turnover was workload to some extent, or maybe primarily for the two of them, but also that there was some promised funding for a position that never materialized, which made them, was part of their decision. And as far as I've heard, I don't think that's the case. And anyway, could you respond to that?
Absolutely, so I'll start there. And that is not the case. The person that left did not leave because a position was promised to them for support. This person left because because their passion was with the Brighton community, which they left to for this position, to join us here. Realized that's where she needed to be, and that's why she went back. So that was that individual's reason for leaving. But as for what was promised, since I've been here, nobody promised any positions to anybody. One of the circulating rumors is that City Council promised a position and pulled it back. That's never been the case. City Council is not in any position to promise positions to any department, or take them away. So there's that piece. What was talked about as soon as I got here, and this was talked about before I got here, but what I inherited was we are going to take a look at our budget to see if there's an opportunity for us to fund a 3/4 position. And so looking at our budget, there was the idea that there would be money there, looking at our previous year's trends. So how much money the recreation generated through, and how much revenue they generated, and in comparison to what they're spending. So looking at that, there was a possibility that we could fund this position. So, but when we started digging into it, looking closer, the money we're generating is there, right? But we're spending more than we have in years past. So again, we're looking at previous year's trends. Cost of everything has gone up, and we've seen that through groceries, through gas, whatever it be. And so we are spending more money than we have historically in years past. So that money is not there. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
So,
I was gonna say, I went through the business analysis, and it's pretty easy to see how it happened, because between the pandemic and the changing of the guard, there, for 3 years, or maybe 2.5, because the senior center's been open for a while now again. But for 3 years, the mission of the senior center was quite different than it is today and was before 2019. And then, Michelle was an institution, and nobody really questioned the size of the programs versus the size of the staff or anything like that during that time. And then Brandy was interim and Ronnie is new, and so neither person saw a complete budget cycle end to end. And I don't know, I mean, I'm outside of it, but it took me several years to really understand what was going on with the budgeting cycle. So there was this time when costs and the ratio of staff to activities and stuff had time to get out of kilter, when really it was impossible for anybody to see it. So this is the first time that we've had an opportunity to really study the problem and get it under control. And I think, you know, because in my role as liaison, I've been sleuthing around, and Ronnie blessedly, the first time that the flaming letter came in, you know, and I started investigating, Ronnie called me back in the evening, which is not a thing city staff typically does, you know, just because they work hard all day and then they have, you know, their work-life boundary. But Ronnie did and explained to me what was really happening, and I really appreciated that. And everybody from Harold and Joni Marsh, who gave a really good explanation of what the staffing things had really been like. Everybody is really working hard to get the big picture now so that we can recover from the staffing disruption and get the programs back on track as fast as possible. But I hope that, you know, when talking to your friends and colleagues as volunteers, you will stress the importance of not exaggerating the problems or making up reasons why this stuff happened. I know it's really tempting to do that, but there was a lot of that in Ruth's speech last night, and I spent a good amount of time fact-checking what she said about that, and also fact-checking what she said about some of the activities that she belongs to that were just not accurate at all.
And it just shows how important communication with everybody involved is all along the way.
Yes.
Because I know that Ruth is passionate about this place, and her passion, I'm sure, can sometimes, you know, be too passionate. But if she would have known the facts about the budgeting, then she would have been able to rein
And
stuff in.
I don't want to discuss any individual, but those who have had questions have had the opportunity to sit down at the table, ask them, and be provided facts. Some of those conversations with some people being discussed had those opportunities and had those facts, and there's still some misinformation that's being provided to the community through these individuals. Yes.
What can we do to help that? What
So-
can we do?
I think last night was great, and I don't want to lose sight because I want to make sure I'm providing our board accurate information. And you know, I think last night was a very good start. You know, those passionate people who still had some questions or who feel in some of those responses that city council or whoever it be are still responsible for this decision making or providing these positions. They had an opportunity to air it out, and I think it starts there because, you know, through our Friends Board, through conversations with our patrons here, through the work we've done as an advisory board, we've done we've had a lot of opportunities to communicate out, right? So yes, we are working with those boards and those individuals, but then they're going to their own groups as well to communicate out, right? So I think we had an opportunity to address it. There's still some of those concerns, and I think last night was an opportunity to air it out. We'll see where this goes. You know, Harold's response was great, you know, in the sense of he identified, I am 100% aware of what's going on.
Yeah, Harold's presentation last night was essentially the same presentation we had a month or two ago.
Yeah.
I thought it was basically the same place.
And
Very good.
It allowed those people who had those concerns hear directly from city manager of, I hear you loud and clear, and I'm very aware, like, this isn't the first time we've been hearing it, right? That the work that the advisory board has done has identified the issues. Now he's got to go to the table and make these decisions for the city, which is, I don't want that decision. I'm glad it's not me.
Yeah.
That's a tough one, right? But letting him know, like, he is doing his best to address it with the information we are providing. And, you know, but again, I don't want to lose sight of kind of facts of where we're at. So nothing was promised. We dug in and out of full transparency, right? With anybody that asks, well, okay, well, money's not there. What are you doing about it? So we identified the difference, generating some revenue through recreation. We identified that there's probably a $30,000 to $40,000 difference to fund this position. And so we went to our friends who have Friends of Longmont, who has provided support to some staffing positions, addressing some staffing needs. Said, hey, we're $40,000 short. Can you help us out with this? And they said no. And I presented it two to three different times, and the answer is no. So I made it clear that their stance is we don't want to provide any support for staffing needs. So we then shifted our attention directly to that presentation at the time was for council and that opportunity to meet with Harold.
You know, I thought the mayor and Marcia and Harold all did a really good job responding to the public last night. And they seemed satisfied when the group left. Couldn't see their faces or anything, but they're all very polite. And after they said their piece, everybody took off. I think there was no fireworks or anything like that. I thought it was a very sedate conversation. And so I think how to address some of this stuff in the future is communication, like you said. And we have a number of things, we have a lot of challenges ahead of us, I tell you, to kind of address some of those concerns.
There's a couple of things. One is I was very proud of the people from the community who had come, probably loaded for bear, you know, and even including the individual who was the angriest, you know, after hearing the factual analysis, she really restrained herself. And, you know, as did other folks, and I thought that was excellent. It made it easier for us, for the rest of us to do our jobs and get the situation under control. So I'm extremely happy about that.
Me too.
How many people were there representing the cause?
Roughly five to seven.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah, I think it's closer to 7. Well, you know, there were some that didn't sit together, and then there was that row in the back, and they decided not to speak, you know, so that maybe they were just there showing support because they weren't on Joan's list. I also would like to say, you know, whether it was Harold's decision or Joan's and Harold's decision, but it was really smart of them to pull that up before the public invited to be heard.
I'd like to not defend, but to make a statement as to the passion of the people that spoke. As I have my own passion. And I think that it's very possible that what people that have invested a lot in the senior center and who have experienced the work that's been done over the years and the dedication of the staff, what they've experienced in the last year has been heartbreaking at times, and it has created that level of frustration. I know that budgets rule. I know that the way that one goes about resolving issues with the senior center involves and will involve change. And I think that one of the things that may be of benefit is to, allow people to step back and allow change to happen and accept the reality. I was reminded this weekend by a friend who's known my grieving process about the alcoholic's prayer. And that is, God give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I am in that position. So I think it will be very important. Answer people's questions, be upfront, be really upfront about the future of the senior center, and not have that be the big unknown out there. Joining with the rec department, the changes that are going to occur. And to bring people in to support you that don't have the history or aren't going through the grieving process. That's going to be important. And I recognize that. And I also recognize the frustration, the pain, and the loss that every person dedicated to this center has felt over the last year. And my friends, it's a grieving process. It's hard to see the people you love and care about hurting and not knowing how to support them in ways that you really want to. But we all have to accept what was is gone and moving on. And that's the truth.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can understand that. It's almost like to be respectfully transparent.
Right.
To let people know exactly what, their questions, what the answers are to their questions, but in a respectful way, and letting them know, hey, I know you're hurting, but here's what's really going on. Giving them an idea that you're looking to change for the future. You're looking to figure out problems and you're looking to find solutions. And I think that's going to go a long way.
And the only thing nothing's changed, right? The only thing that has changed is new faces in this facility. That's the only thing that has changed in this facility.
Well, I
Did you
disagree
want to say
with
something?
that.
Because in 7 months, they have not changed anything that I've been here. Do you care to share what you feel has changed?
Share with us if there is something we need to know about it.
Arlene, did you want to say something?
Well, and this maybe I interpreted something wrong from all of the reading that I did, but and I don't understand the Friends part of it as far as salaries or supporting staff, and if they are not going to support staff anymore after 2024, what kind of an impact does that have on your budget?
Right. So, they're focused on more on the individual support for individual supports for paying for new eyeglasses, paying for hearing aid replacements, paying for covering bills that individuals are not able to cover, right? And I try to make the case with them of providing the staff support, which they have done in the past. They have done that, and they just, changed their philosophy that we don't want to cover staffing anymore. And I don't disagree, right? But because it's been done in the past, so, hey, is there any way we can get some support here? And the reason why I asked that, and I do agree, the reason why I asked that is instead of those individual supports, we had over 36,000 individuals sign up for programs last year, 36,000. All right, to me, getting a programmer isn't, so providing these individual supports, right? It's servicing 36,000 individuals, right? So, and I tried that approach, and but their philosophy is, you don't want to fund, and I agree. But again, it's been done in the past, so I was hoping that.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's
Right.
worth a shot.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
Of course.
but in reality though, again, when I was saying nothing's changed, I have not taken positions away. I have not, 7 months, all I've done is make a case to add positions. You brought up a great point last night, that the last time a position was, a resource specialist was requested in the budget was in 2020 and 2015. Twice in the past 8 years, 2 times. Okay, so I'm inheriting the situation, this need. 2015 it was denied, right? Because of other requests were approved. In 2020, it was denied because it was during the pandemic, and a resource specialist was approved. Because of the pandemic, Harold said in his presentation last night, that was the need at the time, not a recreation programmer, it was a resource specialist. That's what our seniors needed. So, twice in the past 8 years, this position was requested.
That's not much.
Yeah.
One more comment on this.
Yeah, well, I kind of have a stacked up set of comments, and ending with a question for the advisory board for advice. I got a lot of really angry letters that, nobody else except in some cases, some other council members. And mostly they wrote to the whole council because they don't know who the liaison is. But a lot of anger was expressed that the impact was to the recreational programs, when the whole time I have been in this position, the urgency was all around the support activities, which we all think of, I think, as essential services, right? So the mental health counseling, the free eyeglasses, the health referrals of different sorts. And I persist in thinking that those are more important and have to be saved when there are budget crunches, and that if something has to go, then it has to be the level of recreational offerings in the program. And a number of people were angry about that. No, they just disagree. This is our whole social life. And yeah, it is in some cases someone's whole social life, but the essential services can be life and death for many seniors who are deeply alone. And so I hope we can spread the word about that the senior center is really, in many cases, just as we heard from the LHA, is a guardian of the most essential well-being of a lot of isolated seniors in Longmont, and that has to remain the vision.
The priority.
Yeah, the priority, exactly. Thank you, Bonnie. That was the word I was looking for. The other thing that I hope will be said, I was on a trip to Italy with Teresa in 2019. And she did an amazing amount of work herding the cats, because, I don't know how many of you who have been on one of those extended tours with the senior center, but keeping everybody together and knowing when somebody doesn't show up because they got too tired the day before and all of that stuff, and making sure nobody's lost, is a vast amount of work. And she told me that year that she was retiring next year. And so she hasn't just extended her retirement by a few months to get over this hiring gap, but because of the extraordinary circumstances that began in 2019, she's given 3 extra years, as did Michelle Waite. And I understand that those people seem like institutions, and there's a certain amount of grief that is, well, they're not gonna be part of our lives anymore because they've left. But they've done their part, and we have to start developing new institutional personalities around here. And so we have to be gracious about letting them go. And I hope everybody will remember that. So now that, and all of the financial information and what the budget requests versus the budget grants and stuff, it's hard work, as it, you know, it took a whole week of many people to get it all together into a 5-minute discussion, but it's all a matter of public record. So anybody can go to the city clerk's office and say, I want to understand this better. And you can do it. And I know from the levels of skills that all of you have, that you can do it. You know, it's not gonna be, there are people in this organization, it's not Greek to them. You can go and find out. So we can all support our user community in that way too, by answering questions. And finally, my question is one of the options is making some of the least essential programs a little more expensive, because they're luxuries, right? And the people who do those things are the people who can afford that. The people who go on the long trips are the people who can afford new suitcases, you know? New outfits.
Special interests.
Yes, and so I think that those people can support this organization and the richness of our programs, especially that apply only to them, by paying a little more. And I would like to ask how you all feel about that, because we have the whole spectrum here, right? You know, some of you are living in LHA properties, and some of you are living in houses that you own outright. And, you know, get to dress beautifully and you know, you're a whole spectrum of people here. So how do you think that would be received?
That was one of the things that I was thinking about was, is there a way that we can take a look at the programs and address the cost? You know, maybe a program needs to be a little bit less in order to get people in, but maybe we need to address the other ones and bring it up.
This whole discussion leads into the next item on the agenda, and as usual, I'm running way behind. Do you have anything further you want to add on that?
You know, as for communication transparency, what was mentioned, right? Amanda's last day was June 23rd. It hasn't even been a whole month, right? So.
And was she the person in charge?
So she was the supervisor, right? So, as for transparency, I've communicated with our advisory board, and we've done this work, right? Communicated with our Friends Board, had open discussions with anybody who has any questions in passing in the hallway, scheduled them, had sit down at meetings, and not only for that piece of communication, right? Getting these positions posted, handling our day-to-day operations. So the normal things, right, on top of that. So it hasn't been a full month. And so, you know, I think with the short amount of time we've had, I think we've done a really good job communicating it out to anybody who will listen. But still getting the pieces together to have an opportunity to figure out how we want to further address this with the community. You know, discussions we're having right now with some sort of handout, fact sheet. Having a fact sheet to allow us to separate fact from fiction. Right. And being able to send that information out to our staff who has anybody come in the door, has these questions, here you go. Right, and just an opportunity for that transparency and us to all be on the same page.
I think that's key.
All right,
I
thank you.
think that is key. And can I just say something too? When we discussed having a way of communicating and using social media, it would be a huge benefit to have someplace, a platform that you could post those things.
so people could go to it.
And so we are working on rebuilding our Facebook. We do have our website, so of course this document that we do and will create will be available on our senior center homepage through the city's website. We are working on rebuilding our Facebook page, but because of the staffing we've been trying to have, we've not been able to allocate that responsibility to an individual, assign that responsibility to any one individual right now. Yeah, we're all at capacity, right? These 2 new hires are big hires, and again, we're still waiting on the 2 additional, right, that are currently posted. Once we're fully staffed and everybody gets their feet under them, then we'll be able to start looking at those platforms. We do have a communications department who we can lean on for different communications through different social media platforms like Instagram. So
With the city?
yeah, they manage that.
So I would like to tell you that if there's anything I can do at all to help, we've talked about this, but just keep it in mind.
I appreciate
If
that.
you need someone to help you out with stuff,
Absolutely.
I'd be happy to do it.
So the question is, the earlier question is, what can we as a board do to help in this space? I think doing what I'm doing as well, having those, and our staff, having those individual conversations with anybody has any questions, or taking it back to your circle or your groups to say, this is what's going on. That city council meeting is available if anybody wants to watch. Harold did a great presentation. Marcia provided great facts as well. Direct them to me. You have this information as well from this conversation of what you can share, and again, just help communicate those facts out as well.
Okay.
All right. I'd like to move to the, got everything covered, Ron?
Yeah, I mean, is there any additional questions for anybody?
There will
Thank
be.
you for the information you shared.
Yeah.
There will be. I'd like to move on to goals. We're running out of time as usual. I gotta do a better job of managing time.
It's okay, there wasn't anything to cut off in this. You
No, I
should
didn't.
take it easy on yourself.
You're doing a great job, Dave.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here's my vision. That's about all I've got time for today. On the general subject of goals. Before you have the ordinance which creates the board. And we talked about this a couple of times, but I'd like to be the guiding goal of this advisory board. And unless there's any objection, I'd like to say that it's an ordinance already. But these should be the general goals that we are working towards as a board. And you can read through yourself, but we are to establish recommendations and guidelines, to review the annual budget, to serve as liaison between the board and various groups, and to report annually in writing to the city council. I just paraphrased that, but that's a general idea. I don't think anybody's got any problem with that, otherwise you wouldn't be on this board right now. What I'm thinking is that today we had a presentation on the housing authority, which was very good. But I think what we need to do, and we talked a little bit about this time, so I'm going over this a little bit for the benefit of you folks. But we need to go over the major services. I think you're getting at this. For example, transportation might be a good one to go to next. Anyway, go through some of the major areas: housing, transportation, resources, mental health. We could organize that different ways. And what I'm thinking is that to meet the requirement of the ordinance, by May of next year, we should be able to be in a position where we can make fairly specific recommendations to the city council as to how various programs might be increased, decreased, changes in operations. I'm just talking, I don't have anything specifically in mind, but I think this goes to your point, that we, what are the more important ones? And we talked about that a little bit before. Arsha, I think you were saying is recreation versus, the recreational component says basic services, to meet the basic needs of people. they're not the same thing, they all take staff time. Maybe we should be making specific recommendations in these various areas. And so what I'm hoping is that we could go through these major areas, and I've thought about this a lot, and I don't have a real good grouping. But I know transportation and housing are major issues. Mental health is a big issue. So if we go through those, and then what I'd like to see is someone, one or two people per topic, take it as their area. And you had, was it transportation? You had responsibility for? Anyway, take responsibility for kind of carrying the load as far as the area. So when we get to the point where we want to make recommendations, you'll be the kind of the key person as far as pulling information together, making contacts, talking to people, and that sort of thing. So that's just one idea. We can do it different ways. But the end point would be by May of next year, we really should be in a position where we can take what we've heard, what we've talked about, and put it into specific recommendations for our annual report. What do you think?
Sounds great.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. That sounds very
Yeah.
goal-oriented and time-oriented, so we know what
Yeah.
when we need to get it done by and what we
Yeah,
need to get
I
done.
had hoped to go into a little more detail on that today, but running out of time. Does anybody feel like they would want to be the kind of the lead person on housing? Lonnie?
Could be.
Okay. Anybody else?
No.
Okay, Lonnie and Sheila, okay. There's your committee.
There we go.
Yeah, and pairs are right, because otherwise they have trouble meeting outside.
Right. There's a, I guess a city ordinance that you can't, outside of a meeting, you can't talk to other people without it constituting a meeting unless it's just two of you. So that's why we're limiting it to two.
Okay.
It's a little different than Salt Lake County, I think, but anyway. So when we talk about transportation, I'll ask the same thing, who wants to pick up the load on transportation? We'll look to you two for kind of pulling that information together to take the lead on housing. You know, that's one approach. If you've got better ideas, let me know.
No, I think that's a good
I
idea.
think we need to do
That's
that.
a
We
good
need to
idea.
systematically go through all of this stuff, sort it into high priority, low priority, volunteer versus regular staff. Those are kinds of things that I think we need to look at.
I'd like to add that over the last 4 years, the seniors, this advisory board did not review the detailed programming recommendations nor the staffing requests. You know, I think that Michelle would tell us what she was requesting, but there was not really any, you know, there was no advisory activity that came with it. The main function of the board, which I thought I bragged about always, you know, was that you all went and became feelers and eyes and ears into the other senior related services and activities that were going on in the Boulder County area and brought that information in. But it was the staff, and chiefly Michelle and Brandy, who processed all that information that came in and made the decisions. And so, and this is not a decision-making board, but giving advice is always important. And so I would like to suggest, because that's all I get to do even to the board, right? But I'd like to suggest that a specific review of the programs would be, you know, an April kind of an activity, so that we have time to
Put it all together.
put it all together, yeah.
Personally speaking, when I was interviewed for the board, excuse me, I made it clear that I can serve in advisory capacity, but I am unable to do a lot of background work because of what I'm involved with and my responsibilities, my personal responsibilities. So, that's all I have to say.
Okay. Well, we all do what we can.
I just wanted to make that clear from the get-go.
One thing I think, Ronnie, one that I've noticed is that I think there's some confusion. And it's not your fault. It's the fault of the system, I think, is that people apparently on this board and some of the staff that I've talked to don't seem to think in terms of FTEs. What are the authorized number of positions an organization have? How are they funded? What are the number of people? And what time period goes along with that staff? And so I think if that could be a little clearer, I think that would help some people. I've been on the board for 2 years and I'm still a little confused. That's the way I think.
And I'm sorry, are you saying specifically to requests or?
Just to understand the operation of the senior center, where the resources are allocated and how many people you got doing what. That would be part of our, maybe our budget review request. All right, anybody have any other comments? Yes.
Last month you decided that we might cancel August, but we would confirm at this meeting.
Right.
So-
What do you want to do about August? If we have our August meeting, that would be in 3 weeks roughly.
Well, we're closed that day and we have a meeting, so we'd have to either reschedule it.
Oh, I thought that was just
Or-
July.
Location.
No, I thought we had talked about,
Yeah.
I thought we had talked about doing it the second week. Am I wrong on that, or we were gonna discuss it today?
It was discussed today, yeah, so
Okay.
those are the two options, moving it or escaping it, and historically in the past, there's been.
Okay, so the first Wednesday in August is not open?
Correct.
Okay, so we have to have it the second Wednesday to be the earliest, right?
If
have
we
it on
had
a
it,
Wednesday.
yes.
All right, is that okay with everybody, the second Wednesday of August?
As far as I know.
Okay, the second, we can, the second Wednesday in August. Any other business?
Just wanna remind everybody, I know everyone got the email. We're doing a viewing here tomorrow, July 12th, at 9 AM to 11 AM, showing the Sister Cities Little by Little video, showing the relationships that's been established from the community along with the Northern Arapaho. Kind of segueing into something I'm working on for an elder exchange with Northern Arapaho. So we will have Sister City staff on site. It's a great video to watch to see the work, why it's important, and ask them any questions as well. Everybody here is invited to participate. If you are interested, please email us so to make sure we have enough seats. We will have enough seats, just making sure that I have enough out. It'll be in this room right here. And then July 26th, this is an agenda item that I inherited when I first started, and Brandy inherited it when she was covering, is our senior center tour. This was something that was brought up, this board specifically was interested in doing and visiting other centers. So I have arranged during our closure, July 26th, that we are going to visit and tour Brighton Senior Center, Northland Senior Center, and the Erie Senior Center. That's July 26th. We'll be leaving at 8 AM and scheduled to be back by 3:30. Again, this board was interested in doing that, so I'm hoping to get a couple participants. If you are interested in going, please let me know. We'll be shuttling everybody. We'll meet here and then we'll use our vehicles to shuttle, and lunch will be provided as well.
Okay, very good. Anything else? Anybody want? Okay, one more.
One more. Believe it or not, this was before today's meeting. I let Dave know this morning that I am going to be resigning from the board. And I think that it would be appropriate that be effective immediately. It is something that has been well thought out by me. I think it's important that, you know, you have new people, new ideas, new points of view. I just wanted to take the opportunity, and I'm sorry, Arlene, we've worked in different ways together, so, but to take the opportunity to let you know how much I've enjoyed working with all of you, and that it's emotional for me, but I think that it's time for new ideas, new faces, and to be a part of the change, a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. So I wish you all good luck.
I wish I could talk you out of it, and I will continue to try.
I told her the same thing.
Yeah.
So you can't wait till the end of the year?
Will you accept a bribe?
No, as you recall. Yeah, my time will not be up in January, so I think it's in the best interest, and I will always be supportive of the senior center, whatever direction you take, and things change, times change, priorities change, so.
Well, thank you so much.
You will be
been
missed.
valuable.
Yeah, I don't think anybody thinks you were ever part of the problem.
Oh.
So,
No.
thank you for being here.
I've heard some very good things. I don't know you well, but I've heard some very good things about the work and your time on the advisory board. And so thank you. Thank you for your work.
I've learned a lot from you. I learned a lot, and I appreciate you.
All right, guys, you're gonna make me cry.
You're super.
Well, we stand adjourned.
Motion?
You need a motion?
I'll make
Okay.
a motion.